they in the area?
No, well, Casey.
Yeah. So they got to see her before she came home. Oh, that's good.
We were supposed to go out of town. We were going to go out of town. It's been rough. She's a regular, constantly.
We'll give her best to Jen.
I can't let ever I have no idea.
Never have my phone on until I go to your government for like 3 years. Yeah.
We are teaching timeliness as one of the soft skills for our students. We are going to be beginning very shortly here because we aim to start at 4 shortly after. So just if you can find your seats, we'll get started here today.
What color was it?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Francesconi. I'm the superintendent of schools for LaPorte Community. Proud to have you here tonight in our new Performing Arts Center. If this is the first time you've been in here, we hope you enjoyed and have time to look around a little bit. Part of the topic, of course, the big topic tonight is preparing our students for college and careers and engaging our community in the number of opportunities that are going to be there, that are going to be needed in order to get our students the experiences they need, a wide variety to help them be successful and find an avenue in life that they choose to pursue as a career. This building was built in part because we wanted to expand the number of careers for our students, particularly in the arts, as well as in the technical side of the arts, such as lighting and all the sound and everything else that you see going on here tonight. Another example of that is that this event is actually being live streamed by our TV production class at the high school, and so thus again, opportunities for students to take skills out of here and take them out to the community and on to their higher education experiences. With that, I'd like to thank our counselors, Dr. Larson, Jen Hunt, all the work that's gone on behind the scenes to put this event on tonight for us. This is what we believe to be our first annual event in which we not only recognize our business partners, but as well provide opportunities and educate the community as to the number of further opportunities that are going to be available via the new graduation pathways. It's fitting that we have former Mayor Milo here tonight, in that a number of years ago we started to gauge the number of opportunities and businesses that were actually engaged at a high level with our school corporation. And we started a business engagement menu. You remember that? Maybe Matt will talk about that a little bit tonight, but we knew a long time ago that as many of your businesses have it as a pillar for you to be engaged in your community and in the schools. So we have that same pillar here, that we want to engage the community in the education of our students. And for many years, our engagement was attending meetings and donating money, which is still one of the avenues that we're glad to have. But outside of that, we knew there were higher order levels of engagement. And we thought that the community was interested in being more engaged than simply stuffing envelopes and volunteering at fairs and so forth. And so you're going to hear about some of those engagement opportunities that we've actually been documenting for a number of years. But more exciting are going to be the number of further opportunities because of the challenge that we all have in education today to prepare for college and career pathways. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on. And we have one of our keynote speakers tonight is former Mayor Blair Milo, who is now Secretary of Career Connections and Talent for the state of Indiana. Blair.
Well, thank you all for the opportunity to join you. Thank you, team, for all the work that you are doing. The conversations that we began having many moons ago really have transpired into so many fascinating things that we're focusing on across the state, and certainly wouldn't have the opportunity to be a part of the work that we're doing statewide if it weren't for the conversations and the work that we were able to start doing here in LaPorte as spokes off of the hub, and as I think Ben will be able to attest to, he's happy to hear now so many stories about slicers and how we do things in LaPorte. And that's really a testament to, I think, a lot of the work that we've been able to do thus far, some of the innovation that has come forward, and the leadership that LaPorte is offering the state in many different capacities as we're thinking about how we're able to fill an anticipated over 1 million jobs over the next 10 years or so. And great opportunities coming forward with that, but also recognizing what are the challenges associated with that so that we can overcome those hurdles to realize the great opportunity coming forward. Now, I'm sure everyone in the audience is thinking, oh my goodness, we've been sitting here for a few seconds and we haven't done any activities yet. Don't worry, now's the time that we're going to actually get up, and as part of tradition, we have to start out with some sort of physical activity overall, as just a testament of, once again, getting the blood flowing. And our activity that we're going to do this evening is one that actually harkens back to Slicer basketball days, and that we used to be in the stands and cheering on the basketball teams and doing a little of the raise the roofs. And so I'm going to ask everybody to do a quick little couple raise the roofs here. Oh, did I hear a little whoop whoops out there? Nice. You're getting excited about engaging with our education and all these kinds of things. And so we're raising the roof and raising opportunities for our students, raising opportunities for our businesses, and also then raising our lifespans by doing some physical activity. So very good. Thank you for indulging me. Good job. You can have a seat there. And just as I mentioned, we are anticipating being able to fill over 1 million jobs over the next 10 years or so. And so a lot of times the questions I'll come across as I'm traveling all across Indiana is then I'm trying to understand some of this concept of career connections and talent. What does that mean for our workforce? And I think it's helpful if we're setting the stage this evening of thinking about why we need to have engagement between our business community and our educators. And it's more critical than ever to have these kinds of conversations, these relationships across our different industry sectors, so that our businesses have access to the talent that you need, the workforce that you're seeking to be able to grow and thrive in so many ways, and for our students to be able to access these really dynamic opportunities and exciting careers that they may not necessarily know exist if they don't have some exposure, particularly when we look early on at understanding what some of these concepts are and getting to engage and explore along the way overall. So across the state, I talked a little bit about the career connections aspect, which I think is piece of what you feel on a day-to-day basis, that we have over 85,000 positions of postings that we see of jobs where employers are seeking for individuals to come and slot into some of those positions. So we have some great opportunities that exist. We've also had a record couple of years that last year for the new job commitments coming forward, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation shared that we had over 30,000 new jobs coming forward for last year. This year, we are on pace, and in fact, we had a cabinet meeting earlier this week where Secretary of Commerce Schellinger shared that we are on pace to beat that number by this year. So we'll be over 30,000 new jobs. I think that it was over 31,000 new jobs that they were looking at by the end of December, so that we will have even more new job commitments coming forward. So the exciting pieces coming with that is that there are also higher wages associated with those different types of positions, which that also tells us those are some different skills associated with what's coming forward in these new jobs. So then how do we ensure that we're preparing the talent to be able to take advantage of these? How do they know what they may be in order to then gain those skills and certainly then have access to some of those employability pieces all along the way? And also, as we look at these pieces, not just closing the gaps that we may see of the 85,000 plus positions in these new jobs, but recognizing that they're changing faster than they ever have before. And so I've seen a wide array of different projections as to where the workforce is going to be by 2030. And one of the statistics that's really stuck out to me has been that a kid who is in kindergarten today, that when they enter the workforce, that 85% of the jobs that they may be taking may not yet exist. So how do we ensure that all throughout this pipeline of their experience and education, that they are able to start to understand what those skills may be needed to take advantage of these jobs coming forward, and for you, our business partners, to have access to the talent that you need overall. And that's where it's so critical for us to have this engagement between the education community and our industry partners, so that then we can have earlier exposure and exploration throughout the process. Now, I think you're probably going to hear a little bit more about what some of the policy pieces look like around that for some of the graduation pathways and why it or how those pieces all work. But I just wanted to, I guess, lay the stage a little bit about why that's so important. Curiosity, and I've had lots of these questions or conversations with many of you, and in my previous capacity as mayor, that we would talk a little bit about having access to the talent that you need. How many of you have had the conversation of saying, you know, I'd train somebody tomorrow if I could get somebody who would show up to work on time, who would show up ready to work, who would show up ready to work with a team and understand different types of personalities? How many have had that conversation and that thought process? So a few hands out there. I can't see very well with the light, so so there were certainly a lot of conversations that we had around that. Graduation pathways are a great way to be able to address some of those gaps that you may be seeing in individuals that you're seeking to be able to employ. With the component of having work-based learning or project-based learning or service-based learning, which is sort of the second bucket of graduation pathways, that's where it's developing these employability skills so that no matter what type of industry area a student may be wanting to pursue a career in, those are key pieces to be able to have to be able to be successful on that career path. And a great example that I've come across of how having those kinds of learning experiences are so valuable for cultivating those employability skills. I was visiting at Subaru a couple of months ago, and they have a fascinating apprenticeship program that is a partnership with Purdue Polytechnic and Ivy Tech, where students are learning about manufacturing while they're also gaining some credits there. And this intro course that they had around manufacturing, they had an adult student who was in the class, and he was explaining how much he learned about manufacturing in this quick process. But he also then explained that as he's learned his role in the manufacturing process and how critical he is to be a part of that team, that when Subaru is turning a car off the line every 67 seconds, that if he takes an extra minute on his break, then that's literally a car that Subaru is not able to then be able to get out in the timeline that they have projected forward. And so that kind of a learning experience then allowed him to connect with that me being punctual is not necessarily just about courtesy to my supervisor or to my teammates. It really is money in the form of a full car in that particular instance. So that's just one type of application that explains how having those kinds of learning experiences are so critical for developing those employability skills overall. I bring this all up as an example of how it helps be able to get at some of those needs that are being felt across our workforce overall, and they're really valuable for the students to be able to have, whether they're adult students or individuals who are in high school or even middle school or elementary school at some point. But that those kinds of experiences cannot happen without the partnership of business with our educational process to be able to develop those kinds of programs overall. The last piece I wanted to mention here before we have a quick presentation that I'm very excited to be able to share this evening is just some of the work that we've been able to do with the Governor's Workforce Cabinet that is focused on the sort of entire spectrum around some of the precursors leading up to those components of the work-based learning, project-based or service-based learning elements. And that's where we've been looking at within a specific action team around career navigation and coaching and better developing what the experiences will be for a student from kindergarten all through high school, and actually then looking for adults once they have graduated as well, and looking at it from a perspective of from K through 5, having the engage aspect of things, where you're starting to engage with the students in a way where they're getting to understand a little bit of what the concept of work is, what some of the key values associated with it, some early exposure around maybe some different industry areas that's age appropriate for those students. And then in middle school, so 6 through 8 type of period, doing a little more exploration of being able to see, you know, what might be some different paths that I'm interested in, what may be paths that I'm not interested in, and learning a little bit more about what those kinds of opportunities may be. There's a whole host of ways to be able to participate in those kinds of opportunities, whether it's a hands-on career fair or happening to do some engagement in the classroom. So there's lots of ways there. And then in the 9 through 12 space, really doing some more of that experience aspect, so that the students are really starting to experience what some different types of jobs are in these different career paths. Again, with the opportunity to think, is this something that I really want to pursue? And if so, being able to access some credentials that stack towards maybe an industry credential, or stack towards getting a 2-year or 4-year degree if that's the path towards that career area that that student is pursuing. And so having some earlier components of what that career pathway is going to be for the students overall. So it serves everyone as a part of this process, so that the businesses are able to access the talent that you're going to need moving forward, particularly as technology is changing, as the demographics across the workforce and the economy are changing, the global marketplace. So that you're able to better access some of that talent earlier on, and develop it with what changes may be coming in your industry areas overall. And then for those students to be able to find what's going to be the best career path that best fits their interests, their skill sets, some of the goals that they have for their lives, and to be able to access some support along the way. Again, none of that can really happen without really dynamic engagement from the business community with education as well, to be able to make all of these pieces work, which are in everyone's best interest. So the last piece that I want to touch on this evening before I turn it back over to the superintendent is that this is, as was alluded to, we began this process a couple of years ago with the Business and Education Engagement Menu, and doing a couple of things with starting the Workforce Teacher of the Year program, and recognizing work that could go into that, celebrating some of the projects coming forward. One of the very exciting projects was initiated by Mr. Presley here, of Hire a Slicer. And Hire a Slicer has been fascinating to watch since its inception, and it is now of great conversation in Indianapolis around the concept overall for businesses to be able to engage locally with some of our talent sourced here at LaPorte High School, and to be able to have some idea about the different experiences that students have coming out, and then being able to make those connections between our students and our businesses to have some greater employment opportunities overall. And as a part of this process, then we also were at a point that throughout my tenure at here with the city, we had the opportunity to raise some funds through the Mayor's Ball for a number of years, and most of those funds were then dedicated towards addressing some of the challenges in the community, some of them being towards then substance abuse overall. Well, certainly employment opportunities are a part of the equation for preventing substance abuse, or addressing some of the treatment elements overall, of being able to make some of those connections towards employment. And so it has been then, it's my privilege this evening to be able to celebrate that we have been able to make some investments with Hire a Slicer and the various partners with We Connect, who are associated with Hire a Slicer as well, to be able to put $15,000 towards the Hire a Slicer program, to be able to better make the connections between opportunities with our students and with our businesses overall. And so I am thrilled to be able, I think we had a demonstration check earlier, but it's actually oh, there we go. so that we did have the high-risk slicer check here overall. So thank you to all the folks who have participated in the program with the Mayor's Ball to be able to make this possible, and thank you to everyone who has been a part of high-risk slicer, whether you're a business partner, some of our education components now as well, our educators that are participating, the students. That are very excited about where this is headed forward. Thank you for the opportunity to join you again here this evening, talk about more spokes off of the hub, and for the resources that you're helping send to Indianapolis of really ideas and really creative and innovative things that are happening here that we are excited to be able to share more with the team across the state, not only in Indy, but in many other communities. So thank you for your continued work. I'm excited to hear about the further conversations that are going to come from this evening and creating opportunities for our students and our businesses across LaPorte and actually across Indiana. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Milo. As well, tonight we're honored to have with us Mr. Ben Carter from the Indiana Department of Education and also the Director of Workforce and Innovation. So he's going to help us as well understand a little bit more about the pathways and what's in store for us in the future in education. Ben?
Well, I think that was a great setup for some graduation pathways 101. Again, my name is Ben. Honestly, I had no idea what a slicer was. I was not familiar with a slicer, but thanks to Matt and the Higher Slicer program, I mean, he's been in my ear nonstop over the last 2 months. I was like, okay, fine, I'll come and speak to people about graduation pathways. No, but this is probably I think this is my 26th presentation on graduation pathways 101, which is just like a look at the policy, what's the nitty-gritty of what's required of students. Typically the presentation is like an hour and 15 to an hour and 30. So I'm going to cut that down to about 9 minutes. So I'll be around for a little bit after if you have some specific questions. But I'm not even sure if this presentation is set up in the right view. But anyways, in 2017, the State Board of Education passed policy on graduation pathways. And so what that means is that for your current 8th grade students, the class of 2023, they're going to be required to graduate utilizing these new requirements. Now, current students can opt in to the pathway requirements, which is exciting as well, that you can start, leveraging some of the great experiences that are available to the slicers through graduation pathways. But essentially, there are 3 different bucket areas. So the first is students are still going to have to earn their credits, earn one of those diploma designations. The second one is something that Blair spoke on, which was learn and demonstrate employability skills, which is a critical component of where business and industry comes in to play. And then the third is post-secondary ready competencies. So there's 9 different benchmark opportunities that students will have to meet. So we kind of talked about the high school diploma being the first one. They still have to earn their credits. But this is the new one, learn and demonstrate employability skills. So how do students satisfy this, or how do we validate whether or not they've learned and demonstrated employability skills? And what do we mean by employability skills? So we're using the list created by the Department of Workforce Development. There's 32 different skills that are on that sheet, but they're what we think they are: critical thinking, teamwork, empathy, punctuality, things of that nature. And I think it's really exciting that the state, whether this is perfect or not, is starting to focus in on what do students need to be successful after graduation, and we're not necessarily solely focusing on students going to 2 or 4 year universities or just 4-year universities. So I think this is a great part. So there's 3 different ways that a student can satisfy this part of the graduation pathway requirements. It's project-based, service-based, or work-based. And so with each of those experiences, there are a specific set of design principles that guide how those experiences are developed. I'm not going to dive too deep into those because I really want to focus on the work-based learning side of things. But the project-based experiences, these can happen during classes, these can happen outside of schools. And I really think with project-based, there's a lot of opportunity for business and industry to get engaged as well. There was a great example of a project-based experience involving employers, where the employer came into the class, they presented a problem of practice that they were struggling with in their particular company. the students worked with the teacher for maybe a month or so to develop solutions to that particular problem of practice. And at the end of that, they came to that workplace, got a tour of that, and presented their designs or how they wanted to their solutions to that. And then they received critical feedback from a panel of employers at that place of business. And I thought that was a great example of one way you can kind of link in, especially on the project-based side. With all of these experiences, the goal is for students to progress through those 32 employability skills. So they're gonna have the experience, and then they're gonna have a work product. The work product could be a presentation, kind of like I just described. It could be a resume, it could be a letter of employment verification, letter of recommendation, it could be a reflection on their experience. So there's a lot of different ways they're going to kind of showcase what their experience was and how they developed those employability skills. So then we have service-based. So service-based is another opportunity. There are some specific design principles that are set out, but essentially that student is going to have some type of volunteer or community service aspect that they've researched, that they've decided the why behind, why am I doing this, why am I, what's the larger societal impact that I'm going to have by participating in this specific experience. And then at the end of it, they're going to reflect on it or create a work product that's going to share, here's what my experience was, here's the impact it had on me, and here's how I developed some employability skills along the way. And the third experience is, I think, one of the more critical ones, and I think where this school district is really leading the charge with LaPorte Slicer on more of the innovative front. With LaPorte Slicer, it's an intermediary. It's kind of a virtual intermediary, and so it helps make the connection between educators and business people to create these experiences. And I'm really excited about work-based learning. Blair mentioned the career and coaching work that's being done at the state. And Strata put out a study where they asked, like maybe 15,000 people, what was the most impactful event or tool that they utilized to determine what their next career step would be. And 84% said a work-based learning experience, which I feel like that's extremely powerful to show that really career coaching and navigation isn't always going to happen in a classroom. The most impactful are these experiences that are taking place outside of the classroom. So by having a work-based experience, this could be part-time employment, this could be an internship, this could be a youth apprenticeship program, and there's a lot of different examples that are included in the policy. But the nice thing about this particular part of the requirement, bucket 2, is that it's all locally controlled. So you determine what the experience is, schools working with the business community, with community partners to determine, what's a good experience for this particular student and how are we going to help them progress through these employability skills so they can have a concrete plan about what they're going to do and also the confidence to realize that plan once they graduate. So there's just kind of a list of some of the different things that are in the policy guidance document that the state board has approved. It's very wide-ranging. You have the on-the-job training. I spoke on employment. There's also the school-based enterprise, which is another way to kind of get engaged in the school, I think. So at the school, you could have an open for business. Maybe you have a graphic arts. You even have the TV broadcasting studio that could, run live projects for people in the community. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. I've worked where we had an auto shop that was open for business or a tech squad that was open for business. And these types of experiences that students have, while they're not out in the community necessarily, they're driven by employers. There should be employer input on how those programs are run. They're more of a virtual work-based experience that students are having. Now they still, from time to time, are working with customers and progressing through their customer service skills, but that's another great opportunity to get engaged. So these are just some questions that come up quite a bit. When can these experiences begin? I think it's important to know that these experiences can happen anytime across a student's career in high school, starting after July 1st, prior to their freshman year, all the way up to September 30th, when the school actually submits their graduate report. So these can happen, they only have to happen once. So if a student completes this requirement and has their experience during their sophomore year, then they've satisfied what they need to satisfy, and the school just keeps track of that letter of employment verification or that reflection letter. And I think a lot of the tracking that's being done through the LaPorte Slicer program kind of sets itself up nicely for graduation pathways. And then another question is, how long do these experiences have to last? It's really up to the local the local education agency to determine how long they have to last. You could have a micro internship, so it's a 2-week internship over fall break, over winter break, and that could definitely satisfy it. It's really more of a personalized experience for that student. What is going to be meaningful and rigorous enough for that student to be able to progress through some of those critical employability skills. I'm going to skip through some of the questions and other pieces like that. This question here is, can extracurricular activities, and I want to bring this up just because of where we're at and kind of where you all are sitting right now, can extracurricular activities satisfy the experience? And the folks that put together the graduation pathway policy guidance document spoke to some of their extracurricular activities that really were critical in developing their employability skills, whether it be sports, whether it be a career and technical student organization like FFA, whether it be choir, stage crew, lighting and design and things of that nature. Yes, those can count as experiences. The students would just need to have a work product as well. So they'd have to have that experience, they'd have to meaningfully participate, which would be like completing a season or completing a unit of that experience, so completing a year in FFA, and participating meaningfully. Participating in choir, marching band, those things take a lot of commitment and discipline. If a student sticks that out and persists, then I think that they're developing quite a bit of employability skills. They just need to be able to present on that and share, here's my experience, here's what I did, here's how I developed those critical employability skills. And then the third bucket, so the first bucket was the credits, they have to get their diploma. The second bucket was an experience, work-based, service-based, or project-based. And then the third are these competencies. So they've listed out 9 different competencies. 1 through 8 are benchmark competencies that are, supposed to be aligned to that student's next step. So the idea is that all 3 of these experiences, or all 3 of these parts of graduation pathways, should align to that post-secondary planning the student's doing. You have your honors diploma. So if a student earns one of the technical or academic honors diploma, that would satisfy those 2 college benchmark exams, ACT and SAT. Then you have the military ASVAB test. You'll see industry certification on there. So the Department of Workforce Development puts out a list of approved industry certifications. So if a student earns one of those certifications, then they would have satisfied this third bucket. And I think one of the things that might be helpful is to look at what's on that list of certifications. Is that meaningful to your organization? Is there something that you would value higher than some of the certifications that are listed on there? And if there is, it's just a 1-page application to have that certification added and to localize that. So if there's buy-in in the community on a specific certification, the Department of Workforce Development will review that with a local industry-aligned board to determine if that certification should be added. Then you have the apprenticeship, which is 6. That is a Department of Labor approved apprenticeship. So right now they don't have the pre-apprenticeship satisfying this particular requirement, but it will satisfy that middle bucket. The CTE concentrator, the career and technical education concentrator. So if a student is able to progress through 2 courses, 2 advanced CTE courses, and earn a C average across those courses, that student could satisfy this as well. So I think that's a critical part, serving on an advisory committee for those career pathways, making sure that the curriculum is aligned to workforce needs, making sure that the experiences students are having in those pathway courses is aligned to your workforce needs, I think is critical. Then you have the long one, which is AP, IB, dual credit, Cambridge International, and CLEP. So these are a bunch of different ways the student could participate in an AP class, dual credit, and earn that. And then the last one I think is what makes graduation pathways special. It's locally created pathway. So for the locally created pathway, there is a separate application. So a school district or a school can work with employer partner or employer partners to develop a specific pathway that meets the needs of that employer or that community organization. And they can submit that application to have that local pathway added as a graduation option for students. So if students complete a series of courses, they have maybe a certification or some experience, and then it's a meaningful outcome, and that outcome doesn't allow them to graduate using the current pathway options, then you'd have a really good chance of having a local pathway made available. And so I think a lot of the groundwork for the locally created pathway has already been laid here through Hire Slicer and some of the relationships that I've heard Matt talk about. And so it might be something to consider during that process. So I'm going to skip through, I went through some of the competencies. the waiver process. And then I think another part is the reporting and tracking. So, just ensuring that students, families, parents, and community members know exactly what do we need to validate that the student met this requirement. For a high school diploma, it's going to be recorded on the transcript. For the experience, it's going to be the school validating the student had that experience and then tracking the work product. So if it's a resume, if it's a presentation, if it's a letter of employment verification, those are going to be critical for the school to be able to have access to that information so they can keep that if they are audited down the road. And then for the third, it's going to be those exam scores or maybe a course list if it's a CTE concentrator that is going to need to be tracked at the school site. So, one thing I'll say about graduation pathways, I think the crux of it was to move away from that I-step test because we didn't want one thing indicating whether or not a student was prepared for post-secondary success. But I think what it does is it starts to make the conversation a little more intentional around employability skills. It makes the conversation a little more intentional around specific pathways related to career and college readiness. And it also puts a little onus on schools to really get connected with business and community partners because they cannot continue to operate the same way. In LaPorte, what I'm hearing and seeing and what I've seen through Matt and what he shared, you've already developed a lot of those relationships. So figuring out a way to scale those, reduce student barriers to accessing those experiences, I think is critical. But that's what I feel like graduation pathways and the new requirements are gonna do. They're gonna help make it more intentional. And one other thing we're working on as well is K through 12 employability skills standards, and Matt is helping out on that group as well. So beginning next year, we'll have grade band standards for students from kindergarten through 12th grade. They kind of list out what are some of those critical employability skills and what can you do in each of those grade levels to help start students thinking about careers, thinking about career exploration, and developing some of those critical employability skills. I'm going to end there, but I will be available afterwards for any questions you have about the policy.
Thank you, Ben. At this time, I'd like to bring up our College and Career Readiness Coordinator, Matt Presley, to introduce LaPorte Slicer and some other opportunities that we have. Matt?
All right. That's not necessary. Is that for the PowerPoint? Because I got it going. Are we excited about that? All right. So there's only about 10 slides here, but I do want to start just by saying maybe just telling you a little bit about my background and some of the things that I've been involved in, just briefly. So I've been an English teacher, or had been an English teacher for 14 years, and had worked closely with senior students primarily around college and career readiness initiatives. So trying to prepare through an English course called Technical Communications, kids or students for life after high school. So we would investigate their career interest, we would work on resumes, we would talk about employability skills, we would practice them, and then they would go out in the community and do mentorships. And so I see a number of familiar faces from the business community here who've worked with our students closely over the course of those many years, and so I truly appreciate the engagement that you've shown, and really appreciative of all the work that our community is already doing to teach employability skills and to work with students in this capacity. That's just a little bit about me. And then I would also say, in my new role here as a College and Career Readiness Coordinator, I've had the opportunity to sort of scale, in some cases, the work that I'm doing. And I'm really excited and passionate about this work. Experience, mentorships, students working in our community is by far, in my mind, really the most important thing that a student could do to determine if what they wanted to do after high school is really like what it would be for them. So I'm going to give you just a quick example. Maybe I had a student 2 years ago who started my class and said, Mr. Presley, I want to be a vet tech, and I know 100% this is exactly what I wanted to do. And so she began the process of investigating what it would take to do that. She applied to colleges. So she had the engagement piece down. She had explored her career, and then she had a mentorship at Dr. Rudolph's office, the Pine Lake Animal Hospital. And in her the second time that she had went there, doctor invited her back in for a procedure. And so she had witnessed a tooth being extracted from a cat, and she passed out. And so when she woke up, she came to school and she said, "Mr. Presley, I can't be a vet tech." Right? And I mean, it's not, and she had thought, like all these years, right, that being a vet tech was really about just, petting animals and taking care of them and throwing them the ball in the yard, which is all great, right? But it wasn't exactly what, she thought it was going to be. And I think, that's an example of a student who really had to shift gears, right, in that moment and say, this isn't for me. But I think what a beneficial experience for her to know, right, that she's not going to school for something, or she's not going to be in a clinical, right, that she's paying for, and when she first realizes this isn't what she wants to do. So I want that experience for every student, and I think Grad Pathways is sort of pushing us in that direction. I'm excited about that. And of course, I've got all kinds of wonderful case stories too, but I think that's a pretty funny one, so I will share that one with you first. All right, that's enough about me. All right, so you're looking at the original document here that was the business and community engagement menu, and it's been referenced here a couple times, but it's important to note that this work, the work of our community, started long before me in terms of engaging and working around business and community engagement. And so I think we're fortunate to have a community, a business community that's really open to working with students and excited about partnering with our school in a number of different capacities. And so I think the grad pathways from the state and some of the things that Governor Holcomb and Blair are doing in Indianapolis are really sort of driving this home. And I serve on a committee. I serve on the Career Coaching and Navigation Action Committee in Indianapolis, and I serve on and I'm helping with the employability standards for the Department of Education. And so I have truly been able to share some really amazing stories and testimonials about the things that we're doing here in LaPorte. And so as much as this is about the new ways that we can engage, I think it's important to say too, thank you for the work that we're already doing. And I feel like we're sort of ahead of the game, and we're kind of leading in a lot of ways in terms of the way that we're engaging with our students as a community, and that's exciting. Okay, so specifically around graduation pathways, I think there are three things, or at least three things that I thought of to share with you that I think are pretty exciting and important. And Ben mentioned this first one, and it's the move away from standardized testing, right? So we know that, I truly feel that a test score, right, does not equate to a person's ability to have a successful career or to do a job correctly. And so this is really opening up the opportunity for students to graduate in ways that best fit them. And it's not relying on a score, on a test score that doesn't really reflect their true ability to be a productive citizen, in my mind. And then the point two there is increased emphasis on employability skills. Blair mentioned this. We're preparing students for jobs that don't even exist today. So the content that we teach our students, while it is important, probably isn't quite as important as maybe how students behave and how they're able to communicate and problem solve and adapt. Sort of all of those skills that are so essential no matter what the job may be. So we really need to really think about how we're preparing our students to be successful in any career, in any possible avenue that they may pursue. And we know that likely it will be more than one, right? And then the bullet point 3, increased emphasis on career planning through exploration, engagement, and experience. And again, even with our own students, I know last year our seniors, 25% of our seniors had self-reported that they were going right into the workforce. So that's 125 students that are leaving our doors, our school, and going right out there. And there's probably more than that if you think about, self-reporting that, right? And so in some cases, those students are entering our community and our economy with what skills we provide them here, but with little additional training. And so we really can, now we can really, I think there's momentum and emphasis on trying to prepare kids for careers, working with our business partners in our community to fill needs, to identify needs and deficiencies, and then to work with our students now to sort of scale them up and get them ready to go. And that requires engagement from our community partners. And then to that point too, there's an interesting statistic about Indiana that graduates, four-year degrees, students that leave high school and then go to a four-year college and graduate college in 6 years, so that's time and a half. We do that at a 23% rate in Indiana. So 23% of our students get a traditional four-year degree. And so that's like 75%, right, or about that, of our students who are not ever achieving that four-year degree. And so a four-year degree is really not for everyone. We know that, and so now we need to think about, well, what training can we offer, what courses, or how can we partner with businesses to fill those needs within our own community. And so I think these things are pretty exciting. All right, box 2 specifically, Ben had mentioned learning and demonstrating employability skills, and it's the work-based, service-based, and project-based learning. And so all of those are opportunities for us to engage as a community. So right now, I know we have business partners who are working on this spectrum, but we want to encourage more because we have to build out the capacity, right? Because of graduation pathways, the state is really recognizing that these opportunities are valid and that every student should have them. And so I wanted to, I think this is a really interesting or a helpful way to think about how you might, as a business owner or as a community leader, get engaged with our school in relation to work-based learning. So at the very top, there's this job shadow experience, and this would be like a one-time on-site observation where students, a group of students, a class is coming in to just observe and learn about your process, your company, the things that you do, or your organization in some capacity. The second, so sort of moving down the scale, would be a mentorship, and we have students that mentor in a number of capacities through a number of classrooms in our school already, and this would be students who participate in multiple visits over a extended period, and the employer then will evaluate those students on employability skills. And so we have students that are already participating in those activities, and we want to continue to increase those possibilities for our students. Internships, this would be like a more, again, a more in-depth relationship between our school community, our school and our business community. We partner with LaPorte Hospital currently. We partner with Horizon Bank. We have our own cadet teachers. And these students, they participate in a semester-long process where they're working on site daily, almost daily, 4 days a week. And then again, they're being evaluated in terms of their employability skills. And we want to increase those partnerships and work together with businesses to sort of outline what those relationships look like. So there's a set of expectations that we have when a student goes to LaPorte Hospital to do their rotation. And we also know that the hospital expects certain things from our students, so we sort of spelled out what that relationship looks like, and then those students participate in that capacity. And so, again, if you're thinking about, well, you've done job shadowing, or you've currently mentored students, how can we take that to the next level and offer our students mentorship opportunities so they can really dive in their career? And then finally, employment, right? So we know box 2 is about employability skills, and employment is certainly a part of that. So if a student were to be hired by you, you would be helping them meet box 2. And so, as Ben had mentioned, there's this employer verification piece where we would ask you just to verify that they're working with you. And so, so I would just say, in terms of employment, well, I'll talk more about Hire Slicer here in just a minute, but that would be, like, I think it means something to hire a slicer in our community. I really do. And I know as we continue to teach our students employability skills and we ramp up our efforts around grad pathways, that through our work with students, that you can be confident that when you hire a slicer, that you're getting a good product, someone who has employability skills and is ready to go to work. Service-based learning, this would be the other component of box 2 that I'd just like to touch on here for a minute. So any opportunity that you may have as a business to engage with a school, with a class, with a student or a group of students, a club around a service project. Again, this helps the student graduate and meet that box 2 requirement. There are just a couple of components there that relate specifically to box 2, and that would be that as a business, you provide them the opportunity for service projects or the resources in relation to service projects, or finally, that you are providing some type of educational content or support in relation to the service project. So if we all went right now, if we all left and went and rang the bells for the Salvation Army, that would be a great service. But the service project piece is really where the state says we should be educating our students about why we're doing that and what that looks like. So having a conversation in our classroom about maybe poverty in our county, or where that money goes, or how we can, or what the importance of getting involved in our community is. And so, and I think too, around service, we really, I mean, if we want our students to stay here and to grow in our community, then I think engaging with them in service projects is really important. So many of the businesses that I talk to, when they say they look at a student's resume or a graduate's resume, they say, I want to see community service, right? Giving back to the community. I've had my business in this community, and so it's important for me to find workers who feel the same way about LaPorte. And so if we can engage our students around community and what it means to be a LaPortean and a slicer, I think that's a really cool thing and helpful. All right, so Hire Slicer. Tonight I want to talk just a little bit about Hire Slicer and about some ways that businesses can now engage around Box 2 with Hire Slicer. So previously, Hire Slicer has just served as a way to connect, really to open up the connection between our business community and our school community, and I think that it's been tremendously successful. So one of the challenges that I know I faced as a teacher was that students would tell me, I have no idea where I can go work in LaPorte. I just don't know what jobs exist. And then at the same time, I would hear from employers that would say, I don't know where to find workers who can show up on time, who can think for themselves or problem solve, who could pass a drug screening. And I knew that both of those worlds existed. And so Hire Slicer really is, I think, has made that connection. It's educating our students about opportunities in LaPorte, and I think it's providing a talent pool for our local businesses that maybe had been untapped prior to that. So we've worked since last April with over 50 companies that have posted positions or internship opportunities on Hire Slicer, and we've received over 300 applications for jobs, and I think we filled somewhere around 25. So as we continue to grow Hire Slicer, we will continue to work with more companies and fill more jobs and really educate and break down the barriers between our business community and our school community. It also has allowed for you to, business community to post jobs and for our students to apply directly for those jobs. And then finally, you've been able to market your business. And so by putting a posting on Hire Slicer, you're really educating our student body and our graduates about the opportunities that are available within our community. Tonight, we have 2 new features related specifically to Box 2, and the first one is in relation to engagement. And so I just would like to, we actually don't have Wi-Fi here yet. It's coming. So I had to do like a screenshot. So if you go to Hire Slicer, you'll see, you can see where the little arrow is there. It says engagement options. This is a new feature on Hire Slicer where we're asking businesses and community leaders to post opportunities for work and service-based learning for our students. So if you click on that, it will take you to a page where you can essentially fill out or sign up your organization for a work or service-based learning opportunity. So in the box there, you would provide some description of your company and the capacity to which you might help. If you have an idea for a service project, you could include it. If you were thinking that you could take a student in your engineering department, or that you are looking for someone to job shadow maintenance, this is where you could provide that opportunity. And again, because we're talking about building the capacity to support all students in work, service, and project-based learning, I think that this will be a really effective tool to help make that connection between our students and our business community. And so they would reach out directly to you by applying through the site for one of these opportunities once you've posted it. In addition, to filling that out at the bottom, we've listed out other opportunities for you to engage with the school. So as you can see on the slides there are a number of different ways that you can engage, and you would be just sort of signing up for one of those opportunities to work with our students or to get involved with our school. And then once you submit that form, it comes back to us, and then we're able to direct your inquiry to the appropriate channel. So if you're interested in the Slicer Mentor program, you could fill out this form, turn this in, the email would come to me, and we would pass that information along to the Slicer Champions program, and they would call you or contact you in some way. So again, we want to provide this as a tool for our business community to connect with us in a number of ways. And so you would log in, go to hireslicer.com and sign up for one of these opportunities. And then our students and our teachers, our classroom teachers, would have the opportunity on the website to see how this might work. So they would look at work and service-based learning opportunities, and yours would be posted, and then they could apply directly for one of these opportunities. And so again, we have the jobs piece, we have the internship piece, and I think this specific tool is primarily focused on engaging around box 2 and continuing to strengthen the connection between our business and our school community. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jen Hunt. She's our K-12 Assistant Principal of Counseling.
So I see people leaving. I told them to leave when they saw me. These are people outside that are going to give you more information about how you can get engaged. So our curriculum here at LaPorte Community Schools, as far as career goes, K-12. We are blessed to have a counselor in every elementary school and several at the intermediate buildings, and we've been working on career skills over the last several years. At the K-12 level, we see that in the elementary school, we automatically start working on employability skills, whether that you hear that be through social emotional learning or academics. We try to teach our kids the purpose behind their education, why they should be learning, what they should be learning, and connecting all those academic standards to current and future employability skills and opportunities. As you will see, when we dismiss you out to the foyer area, we have several of our highly important and prioritized engagement opportunities for you in our community, in our schools, and how you can get involved. But those involve STEM opportunities at the elementary, tutoring, that we always need extra tutors for our kids, service learning projects, especially at the intermediate level, that those kids are learning to give back to the community, and we know those tie directly into employability skills. Mentoring, and this year, in the spring, in May, we will be having our first district career fair. So we will be inviting all of you to come, hopefully at the high school, for the day to see all of our elementary students, the middle school, intermediate, and the high school. And we will really coach you on how to engage with the kids at their level. Before they would appear here, they would be having some curriculum about their interest areas and be able to visit you and your businesses. At the high school level, we are also, as Matt said, looking through the Hire Slicer opportunities there. We have our Slicer Champions here tonight, the mentoring program that's great, many of you are involved with, to not only help our high school students learn employability skills, but talk about some of the growing up issues that they have as well. Also, we, through our Lilly Endowment Counseling Grant, we were able to focus a little bit about improving ourselves as a staff, as a faculty. We believe our community all has a part in having our kids grow up. All of you are part of, as a community member, influencing our future citizens. So what we put together is a series of 4 workshops. One was held last June. We're going to have another one this June to come together as a school community and as a business community to learn how to improve ourselves. I'm sure that your workplace, you would say, could use some improvement of some sort. Everybody still wants to improve in some capacity. So we had the vision of bringing everybody together to all have the same language and to really shoot high for what we could be as a community. This year's topic is leadership excellence. We have a tentative date in June. We are looking for anybody who would like to be involved and also putting together that program. Several of you were in attendance last summer, and we appreciate if you would come back and help us again join into a greater concept of customer service and learning how to be better leaders. And here's Matt's information. So what we are going to do right now is go ahead and dismiss you to go out into the hallway to learn more about different levels of engagement from our elementary, intermediate, and high school. There's a Hire a Slicer booth out there, table, that you are able to get more information on, and we will all be out there too to answer any questions you might have. We thank you very much for coming this evening to this event, and please feel free to contact any of us at your convenience. Thank you.
We're adorable.
Yeah.